Hi, welcome to the Spiritual Principles Made Practical podcast. I'm your host, Scott Friedman, and today I'm very excited to have as a guest Don Shade. He has cerebral palsy and he has successfully started multiple businesses. And I'm just waiting to hear your story. I can't wait another second. Tell me your story and how you've done what you've done.
Well, Scott, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you for having me as a guest. I'm honored to be here. Uh, kind of the way things started, uh, a buddy contacted me back Labor Day weekend of 2005, and he said to me, he said, I'd like to get down to Baltimore and check out this real estate training. If you go along, he said, I'll buy you a steak dinner and we'll have a couple beers when it's over. And every man has his price, and I went at the time. What made that so great was I worked for a temp service, and it was the Tuesday after Labor Day. If you took an unexcused absence, in other words, if I called in sick, I lost my holiday pay and the next day. Now, when you're one person making like $13 an hour back then, 2 days pay in a week is a big deal. The issue is when I went down to that training, it was like the guy was talking directly to me. And I was thinking to myself, I could get this to work. And eh, I did get it to work. But first, let me back up and kind of start the whole story. Uh, as a little kid, being born with cerebral palsy, I didn't see in my mind's eye, I didn't see that I was different or anything like that. When it's all that you don't consider it a handicap. If I woke up tomorrow and my right arm was paralyzed, that would be a handicap because I would have to adapt and overcome and kind of learn how to do some things all over again. But cerebral palsy is a birth defect that I was born with. It's all I've ever known. So basically, what it equals out to, you get up in the morning and you walk the way you do, and I get up in the morning and I walk the way I do, and we get things accomplished. Now, there's certain things I can't do. I'm never going to be a marathon runner or anything like that, and I've tripped over my imagination and different things like that. They'll be like, Don, what happened that you fell over? I don't know. I guess my equilibrium shut off or something. Uh, but that's the situation with that. And even as a little kid, when I went to kindergarten, the teacher in there, her husband did woodworking, and she built this little wooden stool that I could sit on. Because in kindergarten, they have you all sit on the floor, and she reads a story and all that kind of stuff. You know, back when school was cool and all that kind of stuff. The first day, she set me in that stool up there beside her, and the story she explained to the class how I was different and they should watch out for me and kind of help me when they could and all that kind of stuff. And that group of students I went all through high school with, and they were close. Everybody looked out for me. It was a different generation. I was never bullied or anything like that. But it's amazing how one teacher can make a difference in your life like that.
Wow.
Now, fast forward the story a little bit, and I was like maybe 6 or 7, and I had braces. They were down below the knee, but they were very similar to what you'd see in that Forrest Gump movie.
Yeah.
I had braces like that, and according to my parents, I never learned to walk until I got those braces. Um, and I was walking. There was stores. I lived in a small town, Huntington, Pennsylvania. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it. But my grandmother and I used to walk down to like 5 and 10 and a Rite Aid and different stores like that, which was kind of cool for me because I always knew I was going to get a Matchbox car or something really cool. And I remember walking back there, and we passed these two ladies that knew my grandmother. And the one lady said, "That's that little crippled boy." And the other one spoke up and she said, "Yeah, that's Carrie's grandson." And that was my grandmother's name. And I looked over at my grandmother and I saw the pained look on her face. And I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say as a little kid, but it stuck with me for years. I spent probably 20 years of my life sitting on a bar stool. I didn't think I measured up because every time I would hear that woman's voice saying, "That's that little crippled boy." And that's kind of what I pictured myself as in the world. This is what people see. They still see that little crippled boy. Even though today I walk unaided and I don't wear braces or anything like that. Um, but it's the image that I had, and I used alcohol to self-medicate.
Yeah.
And honestly, what happened was, even after I built a business, I built a seven-figure real estate business. I did 71 deals in 3 years using none of my money, none of my skills, because I said to myself, I know that I can't do this alone. I'm going to need help. So who can I get to help me? And I built teams of people around me to do everything that I couldn't do or I didn't want to do. And the training that I took, it seemed like I was never going to get a house in the beginning. There was people that had two and three properties, and I was still yet to get one. But once I got my system in place, next thing you know, I've got all kinds of properties, and I'm basically telling the people in the class stayed in touch, and I'm telling those people, oh, I bought 5 or 6 properties at the last auction, and my team is handling it and all this, and they're like, Don, what do you got going on? But for me to overcome the situation of that woman saying, that's that little crippled boy, it really stuck with me. How many other people now, was that woman out to hurt me? No, she was probably a kind-hearted old lady. I didn't know her. I never saw her before, but I don't think she was out to hurt me. I don't think she was out to do any kind of damage. It was going to be life altering. She just said what was on her mind at the time, and it didn't matter that those words had weight to that little kid. That's how I saw myself. And it took me years to get over that. And even at building a seven-figure business and getting totally free from a job, that didn't do it. I had to keep working. As far as you can never work hard enough to overcome a negative thought process. And to date, back when I started my real estate business, I didn't have two nickels to rub together. And I built myself up. Since then, I've spent over $400,000 on training. I've worked with some of the best coaches around the world to build businesses and do that kind of thing. Um, but it took so long for me to be able to look myself in the eye and be proud of me. And that's kind of something that I talk to people about is it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in or what you do for a living or whatever. If you can't look at the person in the mirror and be happy with it, you've got to make some changes. And that's what I had to do. And it took me years to get through it. If I knew then what I know now, things would have been a lot different, but that wasn't the way it went. It just I got an amazing story of everything that I went through, but I could have avoided it if I would have known in the beginning how to handle it. And I
So,
didn't.
so how did you handle it? How did you change your self-image to get to where you are now?
Well, the first thing that happened before I was in any kind of real business, I call it, a guy approached me and he was saying about, oh, are your legs always that way? Or, what's going on? And I said, I have cerebral palsy. And he said to me, he said, it seems like you have a great attitude. Is it just today or are you that way every day? And I didn't want to tell him, no, I'm a moron most of the time. But and I said, no, it's that way every day. And he said, I'd like to talk to you about my business. At the time, I was 22 years old. Nobody ever took an interest in me about anything. And he gave me his business card. That turned out to be the Amway business. And I'm kind of dating myself. That's an older network marketing business. But what I like to think back then is God was developing his leader. I met some of the greatest people. I met Robert Kiyosaki. I met Zig Ziglar when he was still alive, Les Brown, different things like that. But they had a great support system with, at that time, it was cassettes. Um, they had Tape of the Week, it was called, and they had books and all this. And I never made a dime in that business, to be honest with you. But what I learned was how to fix me. And I was in that business for maybe 4 or 5 years, and I never had an interest in building a network marketing business back then. I wasn't the type of guy that could go out and sell something, so to speak. But what I did learn was the kind of person I wanted to be and what it took to get there. And um, they're very religious and very respectful. Everybody treated me great at that time in my life. I never had so many friends, and it just really worked out great for me. And that was kind of the stepping stone to get me where I am today. So
So, but you built, you've built tremendous support system around yourself, right? And a
right.
team to do stuff. And how did you attract those people? How did you put that together? How did that come to be?
Well, it started, my business partner, his name is Chris Hutchinson. Him and I worked in the same factory. He ran a printing press, and I was what was called his dryer attendant. I sit at the back and looked at the sheets that he printed to make sure everything was all right. And I had a system of how I wanted to build my real estate business, but technically, I couldn't do it. I didn't know how. I didn't have the skill set. And I knew he was a computer guy. I went to him and I said, "Here's what I'd like to do. Can it be done?" He said, "Give me a week or so to see if I can figure it out." And he comes back into work like 3 days later and he hands me a list and he says, "Here's the things that you need to buy, and if you need help setting them up, I'll be glad to help you." That system that him and I put together did over $7 million worth of real estate.
Wow.
So we really got good at it. And I'll tell you, I was really blessed to have him as a partner because he had endless patience with me. We were buying houses for taxes and that kind of thing, and I would do what's called running the list, and I would go out and basically put together, run this list. Everything was put together on a tablet computer. Well, then I'd get out there and I'd forget what he showed me. And I'd call him up. It'd be like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd always set it up that we were at the first property at daylight, and then I could get this thing to work. So, like Sunday morning, I'd call him up, "Chris, I can't get this to work." And he'd be like, "See them three little dots up the right hand corner?" "Yeah." He said, "Press it." I'd press that, and it would do exactly what I wanted to do. I'm like, "Oh, look at that." And he never got nasty with me or anything. But it just worked for us. I mean, I was so he was so patient with me back when I was literally that stupid. I had no idea what I was doing or how to do it. And he would show me, a couple different times. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I got it," and all this stuff. And then I would get out there and I'm like, "I forget how to do this." And he's been basically my tech guy ever since. Fast forward that a few years, and I wanted to put my real estate training online and sell that as a course. The first coach that I went to in the real estate business gave me some of the best advice I've ever had. And what he said to me, he said, "Don, always make sure you're keeping a journal of what's going on because you're not going to remember." He said, If your business comes together the way you want it to, you're going to have a sellable product. In other words, you can teach people how to do this and teach them how to make that kind of money and this, that, and the other thing." Well, when I was reading back through that journal, he was right. There was stuff in there that I wrote that happened that I had totally forgot about, up until I read it. Well, word got out that, we were basically building websites and, putting courses online and that kind of stuff. And people started contacting us for help. And to this day, I don't have real estate training online, and I probably never will. I got totally out of the real estate business and I got into helping people build online businesses and teaching them what to say and how to say it and basically how to hold a customer's attention, that sort of thing. So that's kind of how the business kind of pivoted and where we are today. So
But somehow or another, I mean, um, there are a lot of people that would like to come up with what you have. How did you figure it out?
the the easiest way, to be honest with you, I built my business and I build every business that I have with the mindset of a quadriplegic. Because I mean, I can get around, but my legs aren't the best or anything like that. So I think, who am I going to get to do this? and what pieces are missing. And a lot of it I learned as I went because I would get up against the wall on something that I didn't think of. Okay, I need somebody that can do this. And they would come in and handle it and that sort of thing. But what it came down to really is I had to be honest with myself about what I was good at and what I wasn't. And I got go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you, tell me what you're best at.
What I'm best at really is putting teams of people together and creating systems that will take basically any business to the next level.
And
And
go ahead.
one of the things that I like to do with people in the online space is I do what's called a customer conversion analysis. And I do this for free. And what I'll do is I'll get a hold of them point blank and I'll say, okay, sell me your product. And most of them can't. They don't know what to say when somebody says, tell me what you do. They'll talk for 10 minutes and you don't have any explanation on or really understand, and they don't realize that. With the customer conversion analysis, what we do, I will walk them through, okay, sell me your product. And then we go through kind of the physical end of it of, okay, I have my credit card in hand, I'm ready to buy. What do I do? And you find a lot of different sticking points there that people didn't realize. And I'll be like, okay, this is a customer disconnect, different things like that. And I had a lady tell me a little while back, she said, Don, this is the best call I was ever on. She said, I thought I was ready. And then when you start drilling me with questions that a prospect is going to have, she said, I didn't know how to answer them. And it's better to find out when they're dealing with somebody like me that comes from a coaching point of view than to find out that they don't know the answer when they're dealing with a customer.
Right, of course. Of course.
So, but that's kind of how it all started in a nutshell and how we got where we're at and the things I do to sort of move people forward type thing.
So, but like, so you see a need that needs filling, and you identify somebody. How, uh, I mean, how do you offer them a piece of the business? Do you pay them? How do you bring them into your team?
At this point, I pay people to kind of do what I need, like tech. Chris has a whole tech team behind him because it got to the point he couldn't do everything anymore and that kind of thing. I have a few coaches that I go to from time to time as needed that are kind of trained the same way I am. And what it teaches people is this. What I tell people is everybody is handicapped. The only difference between yours and mine is you can see mine.
Right,
Other people can cover it up. If you can't open your laptop and build a website, you're technically handicapped.
right,
If you can't go in the kitchen and follow directions and bake a cake and get it fit to eat, you're handicapped in the kitchen. If you can't go down and change your own oil, you know, you're handicapped in that way. But people think nothing of getting somebody else to do it for them whenever it's something like that. But when it comes to their own business and they're trying to get through it on their own, they want to do it on their own. They think nobody can do it as good as me. And I couldn't afford to have that mindset because I knew that I needed other people to be able to make it. So
right,
that's
right.
kind of how all that got together. And there's people that the way it started out, I started working with basically stay-at-home mothers that were looking to put together income on the side. And Chris would show them what to do. Now, it wasn't rocket science or anything like that. He would show them what we needed done, and they would do it, and I would pay them, a few bucks here and there, and everything moved on. Well, then as the business got bigger, we started putting people in place that were going to stay, and it got more serious, so to speak, at that point.
But you know the but you know the pieces that have to be there to make it all work, right? I mean, it's,
Correct.
so
Correct.
so somehow or another, um, you're not blind and handicapped in ways that other people are.
Right. Right. And it comes back to basically the mindset that I used. And what I thought was, what if there comes a day that I can't get around and I'm in a wheelchair? Is my business still going to run? Now, one of the advantages of setting a business up like that is you can take a couple of days off and nobody knows it. Your
Yeah.
business runs without you. So, they don't count on you for everything. The majority of stuff that I handle over the phone because I can say, okay, I need this, da 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 da, and they'll bring up whatever objections or whatever's going on at the time. Well, what if this happens or what if that happens? Okay, we're going to deal with that this way. It took a lot. I had to grow a lot as a person. It took all kinds of books, all kinds of recordings on a daily basis to get where I'm at right now. I had to get to the point where I was proud of me. And I didn't always feel that way. It was kind of like the world beat me down. I didn't feel that I measured up. And and one of the things that I really looked at was what makes me stand out from everybody when they look at me, why would they want to do business with me? What makes me better than the next guy? And I think honestly, what the answer to that question is this. I know how to put teams of people in place because I was in the position where I had to. I knew everything wasn't going to come down to me doing it or I'm the best there is at it. And there's been things that I've tried and this, that, and the other thing, and it just wasn't for me. And I failed a lot more than I've won, and just different things like that. I just didn't quit. I guess I was too stupid to just walk away from it. I said one day I'm going to get this to work, and I failed my way to success, so to speak.
So, where are you now in terms of, what's the next thing for you?
The next thing is we've put together a lead generation system. It specializes for people that have online business. It works on all the social media platforms, and we work with people to get them dealing with people that are interested in their product and booking calls. We focus on the high ticket end of things. It took us basically a year and a half to put that system together, and then it took us another year to kind of work the bugs out of it. We had issues along the way, and what we found was we built a system that was too complicated for people to run. In other words, the average guy couldn't put the time in and couldn't run it, so to speak, the way we could. Now, I will say this: the only reason I knew how to do it is because I learned it on the way up. As Chris was building it, he would put a piece together and he would show me how to run it. So I was around it enough that okay, I can run it and I'm good at it. It wasn't because I got any extra tech skills, I assure you of that. And here's what it comes down to as far as the tech end of things in an online business. I just have absolutely no interest in learning that kind of stuff. It's not for me. Most of it is over my head. Um, but like I said, the only reason I know how to do this is because we learned it. I learned it as he was putting it together. So what we did, we focused on a 100% done for you system that we can plug any business into and get them results and get things moving forward and that sort of thing.
And how long has that been up and running?
That has been up and running probably the last 3 months or so, where it's been kind of flawless. Before that, it was up and running a little bit, and we would run into things and would make some changes. Everything was a learn as you go, and there was things along the way that didn't exactly go smooth, and um, you know, it didn't go as well as I'd hoped. But one of the things you learn when you have teams of people around you is I had to learn patience, because my feelings are okay. I told you what to do at 8 o'clock this morning. By lunchtime, I'm like, well, are we done yet? I have no concept of how long it takes to build stuff. And Chris has told me different times, listen, you need to leave me alone the next 2 days so I can build this and I will get back to you. We had some growing pains in the beginning because I was, basically telling him what to do, and I was thinking, okay, it's been 3 or 4 hours. Are we done yet? And the same thing, the reason this software exists the way it does in the system we have is basically I kept wanting him and his team to build it. I want this, I want it to do that. I want it to be easy I didn't say I want it to be easy that anybody can run. I was focused on getting a system that worked first and then, getting it where people could run it. But basically what we do, we have a full team that runs everything for, anybody that purchases software and moves forward with it, all that kind of stuff. Because everybody out there needs leads and money coming in the front door. You're not in business anymore.
Absolutely.
I don't care how big your business is or what you've done. If the cash flow stops, you're in trouble.
So there are a lot of people that are, you have competitors, and how do you address, if somebody's saying, you can produce leads and this guy can produce leads, how am I going to choose between the alternatives?
Well, one of the things I don't worry about competition. I kind of stay in my own lane,
Hmm.
so to speak. And one of the things that makes our system kind of above everybody else's is we do everything start to finish. But that's on the tech end of things where we do everything. I step in and coach people on how to improve your business, how to get people interested in what you have, what to say, how to say it, um, what makes people want to deal with you. That's the kind of things that I deal with, and I change people's mindset. They say, "Oh, I struggle with this, I struggle with that." Da 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 da. Well, okay, let's get somebody else to do it, and let's get you doing the things that you don't struggle with. And that's changed things for a lot of people, and it's also changed things for me. But the difference is I had to do it from day one, where it's a learned skill from them for them.
Right, right.
So with that being said, I feel it makes us stand out because you're getting basically a complete system, everything from start to finish. I cover coaching on, one side, and Chris handles all the tech support and, this, that, and the other thing, and making sure the website is right, and all the tech garbage that goes with it. I'm not going to get into that end just because I don't know anything about it, and I don't want to know. But um, what I like to do is I look at people's businesses and I say to them, first of all, where is it that you want to be? What is your goal? Whether it's, sometimes their goal is financial, sometimes their goal is, I want to set this up that I have more time and less headache, and I help them to do that. Okay, here's how we put that together. Here, who would be in your organization, who would be your go-to person, and this is what happens from there. And it's basically what it comes down to. And one of the quotes that I've lived by for years, I always say, never let your limitations dictate the size of your dream. And that's exactly what I did. And that's what I teach other people to do the same thing. Not that they're limited, but they may say to me, Don, I have a great business, I make great money, but I don't have any time. And the problem is their own personal hangup. They don't trust anybody else to step in and do what they do, so to speak. My number one rule is never let anybody else run your money unless it's a family member that you trust. Anybody outside of your family has no business in your finances. Outside of the money situation, who can we get to help you run the monster that you've created? Because a lot of times that's what people have, that they have dreams of a big business and a big income, but they don't realize the headache that they've created with it just by not knowing a few key steps.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I've always thought was important is authenticity and openness, and I can see, that um, you've got that in spades, and I feel like that's um, a big part of the buying decision is like, do I relate to this guy, and is he genuine with me? I mean, the people that say, it's going to happen without challenges and difficulties and setbacks are not very credible because that's not how things happen.
I've always said, and pardon my language here, I'm not the type of guy to step in shit. I slide in and ruin a whole outfit. And sometimes the best answer is, okay, we screwed up. Let's go back and fix it. And I've been in that position. You've got egg on your face, and it's just the way it is. Nobody has a perfect track record except for on social media. They like to show they have a perfect track record.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything's great and it's just glorious and this, that, and the other thing. And that nobody sees the behind the scenes where they're struggling with this or they're struggling with that. And I've been there, and there's been times that it took me months to get through something because I didn't have the right person to figure it out. And I would have somebody else come in and just literally say, you ought to do this. And then you get that slapping pain to your forehead, one of these deals. Why didn't I think
Yeah,
that?
I'm familiar with
I
that.
wish would have thought of that 3 weeks ago. So that's kind of the situation there. But when I was 14 years old, uh, I ended up going to Shriners Hospital, and they took bones out of my hip and they built my ankle and brought my foot down. I kind of walked on the side of my foot, like this side, and I had a stress fracture twice because of the way I walked. And what they did, they took bones out of my hip and they brought my foot down more flat so I could walk on it. But the reason I tell you that is to tell you this. Um, I was in there, and I never really thought of myself as handicapped, but I saw what handicap was in there, and I have a different attitude because of it. And one of the things I feel very fortunate about is my dad was self-employed my whole life. He had a garage and tire shop. And he always told me, he drilled into me for years and years, you need to do what you can control. He said, don't ever be late, show up every day, and do exactly what they ask you to the best of your ability. And that's all you can do. You're never going to be the fastest guy. You're never going to be the superstar, but there's a lot to be said for the guy that'll show up and they know they can count on every single day. And that's what I did. And it worked well for me. I was never a superstar. I was never management, anything like that. They knew Monday to Friday I was going to be there. And that's exactly what I did. And I was able to get good jobs that worked for me. And, that's how I started out to have enough money to build my business. I was a, when this whole thing started, I was a $40,000 a year factory worker. And I had to pay for the training, put the training on hold, and work overtime so I could pay the credit card bills that I created. And that's what I did. But I decided that I was going to do something different. And one of the things that I did, I'm not wearing one now, but I didn't know any better. I was too excited to know. I created this company called Millionaire Maker 360. Now, when you name a company like that, it puts a target on your back with the FTC, because what they see is, okay, you're claiming that you can create millionaires and all this stuff. Well, how many have you created? And the answer was, I didn't create any. I'm still trying to get there myself. Um, but I had these T-shirts made, and they said on the back, "Ask me how I can make you a millionaire." And it had my website on there, and they were all bright colors and all this. And the thought process behind it was, people stare at me every day. And what I used to tell people, when you have cerebral palsy and you're walking along, you always trip and fall forward. Well, if I fell on my face, hopefully somebody'd read my shirt and pick me up, and they'd be like, how can you make me rich, buddy? I don't care that you fell over, but how could you make me a millionaire? That's what people want to know. And but since then, now, to be honest with you, I was standing in line in a convenience store with a cup of coffee one day, and a guy behind me says, "All right, I'll bite." He said, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I build websites and help people create online income and all this stuff." We didn't have software back then. Um, he said, "Well, I need this, that, and the other thing." It was a $6,000 job back then. And what I asked people is this: how many T-shirts do you have in your drawer that have made you $6,000? And I did that just because I knew people looked at me everywhere I went. Well, if they're going to look at you, give them something to look at. Now, since then, I did get wiser, and I never got in trouble with the FTC or anything like that. But I did change the company and kind of the direction we were going because I was afraid of that. Um, but I was just nothing more than stupid and excited in the very beginning, and that's how we got there. But I do tell the $6,000 T-shirt story because it does make people start to think, well, maybe I should get stuff done. They kind of overlook that. And most people overlook very simple stuff that they're missing in their business that they could be using to make money. Prime example, the T-shirts. And do you go out of your way to talk to people everywhere you go? And it's a learned skill. It really is. I was so shy in the beginning that when I shook your hand, I wouldn't look you in the eye. Not because I was crooked or a criminal or anything like that, but I just I didn't feel I measured up. I didn't feel I brought anything to the table. And that's something I still have to focus on to this day when I shake somebody's hand is to look them in the eye because I always felt I was less than good enough. And what I find from working with people is there's a lot of people that have that low self-esteem. Unless you get them in something that they know about, they can talk about their family, their business all day long until it comes time to sell the product and ask for money. Everybody loses their backbone when it comes time to ask for the money. And my feelings are be proud of what you created. It's time to get paid for it. Now, I wasn't always that way. I grew into it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my concept is that, what I've tried to say is that what's fair is in everyone's best interest. And let's talk about what's fair considering this that contribution or this change that wants to be made. And I've never had anybody argue against me saying that, what's fair is not ever in everyone's best interest.
What I like to say is we're always looking to create a win-win situation because if we can create a win-win situation, you're going to brag about it as much as I am.
I love that. I wrote a book transitioning from zero sum to win-win thinking, so I'm on board with that.
Nice, nice. I'm in the process of putting my book together. It's going to be Never Let Your Limitations Dictate the Size of Your Dream.
I love it. I
And
love it.
it's going to tell the story, and I may include chapters from a couple other people that I've met along the way that have kind of the same kind of superstar story. Um, Everybody thinks that we were handed a lesser card. And now that I've grown past that, we weren't really handed a lesser card. We just needed to learn how to do things differently. And, things that everybody else takes for granted.
So, me and other people, oftentimes have a fear of telling themselves, I can't afford the help that I need. And so, how do you address that when people come to you and say that?
The first thing I say is, okay, how long have you been without the help that you need? And they're going to say, well, I've needed this help for maybe 3 months or 6 months or whatever. What do you think it cost you to hide behind that excuse of you can't afford it? And one of the things I ask them is this: what happens if, how long can you go trying it out? You say now you can't afford it, but what if bringing that extra person in to handle whatever for you, what if it made you another two or $3,000 a month? What if it made you 20 or $30,000 a month? How would you feel then? Would it be worth the gamble? Is now the time to look this in the eye and say, yeah, I might want to pull out a credit card here and go into debt a little bit to get this to work out? It could make a world of difference. And most of the time, people people always say, I can't afford it. That's a very convenient excuse. That's the easiest excuse. And what they're saying to you is, this isn't important enough for me to figure out a way to work it into my budget. Because at the end of the day, people are going to do what they want to do. It doesn't matter what it costs. If uh, if you were looking to go on vacation to Hawaii and you were going to do it no matter what, it wouldn't matter what the plane ticket cost. You were going to be there for whatever reason. If I was looking to get to the next level in my business and I needed something that was, let's say, $1,000 piece or $1,000 person, why am I going to hide behind an excuse? Because in what it comes down to is fear. The reason they do that is that everybody thinks the worst thought automatically. They don't think, what if it works? They always think, well, what if it don't work and I can't afford to continue to pay them? Well, then you got to let them go. And I've been in that position. I've hired people running the train forward. I'm the type of guy that will jump and grow wings on the way down. And
Okay.
there's been a few times that the parachute hasn't opened. And we've crashed, and I had to get rid of good people, and basically I just had to apologize. Hey, we couldn't get it. It didn't work the way I thought. It doesn't mean that I quit. I figured out a different way to do it. But the people that hide behind the idea of I can't afford this. Okay, how can we get you in a position where you can afford it? What if we tried it for 60 days or tried it for 30 days? Could you afford that so we can try it and get it to work out? And what you don't want to happen, you don't want to get to the end of your life and be at the point where you think, man, what if I would have just done this? What if I would have took the gamble?
Right.
If you went out tomorrow and your car didn't start, you'd do whatever it took to fix it because you need a car. And somehow you would figure out how to afford it. When does your business take the same priority? Are you going to sit and watch Netflix, or are you going to figure out how to make your business work that you don't have to worry about money? Or see, the bad part with an online business, people literally lose nothing in their eyes by procrastinating. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next month. Meanwhile, a year slips by, 2 years slip by, the world's moving on. They're missing the big project, all because they were scared or they didn't think they had the money. And legitimately, they do have the money. They just haven't figured out, okay, what am I going to have to do to make this work? If I was able to say what I really wanted to people, I would say exactly this. When are you going to learn to be honest with yourself about you, your dreams, and what you want? Because that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. If you need to hire somebody and it costs you $2,500 a month and they come in and they straighten out your whole business and you have leads coming in the front door and you're making good money, is that person worth that $2,500 a month if they make you double that or more? Yeah, they are. So the problem with you not being able to afford it is you, because you have to start thinking on the side of, what do I have to do to get this to work? Don't be always thinking the negative of, oh, what if it don't work? And then I have this big credit card bill because I went out on a limb. Well, at some point you have to be willing to take a gamble. One of the coaches I was dealing with said, keep in mind, Dave Ramsey didn't become a multimillionaire by staying out of debt and not using his credit cards. He became a multimillionaire by selling you on the idea. And that's true. There's nothing wrong with Dave Ramsey's training. I've been through it and I know exactly how it works and all that kind of stuff. But where he made his real money is selling the idea to you. He could only go so far on his own budget of doing what he's doing. And he does great things for people. And I always agree with that. But when you're looking to do bigger things, you're going to need to go into some debt. You're going to, there's times you're going to use Visa, MasterCard, and Discover. And I always say, I always have a wallet full of partners, Visa, MasterCard, and Discover. And If you get to the point where you can't pay them for a couple of months, they're more concerned about your business and your health than you are. They're calling you up. Oh, are you all right? Well, and there were times in my business, if I'd have dropped dead, the people at my funeral would have been Visa, MasterCard, and Discover. And they're like, we didn't even know he was sick. And you're gonna leave this world with just as much as you came into it. So if it doesn't work out, for example, when COVID hit, it wiped my real estate business out because our governor got on TV and he said tenants don't have to pay and you can't evict them. And it stopped all my income that day. And I'll be honest with you, I was still basically kind of dumb at that point. I was spending money as fast as I was making it. And when the income stopped, the big bills kept coming.
Yeah.
And that's a real growing experience. What am I going to do now? We weren't to the point where we had software and people paying us monthly subscription and that kind of thing. That hadn't even been thought of yet. I was still, and to be honest with you, the number of properties that I had and everything that was going on, yeah, it had big bills, but it also had big income. And you think to yourself, well, this is never going to stop. People always need a place to live. Who would ever thought COVID came along and, it was a wake up call for everybody.
So how did you survive it?
I ended up going totally under. I had to file 2 Chapter 7 bankruptcies to get out of the mess. I had to file one on a business and one personally and start over. And I don't care how much training you've been through, it is tough to look yourself in the eye and still believe that you're good when everything is falling around you. That was the hardest thing that I ever went through. And here's the bad part. It cost me $5,000 to file those 2 bankruptcies. And I thought to myself, well, if I had $5,000, I would be broke. I mean, we're not talking like Donald Trump broke. I mean, we're talking really broke. It's almost like there's 2 different levels. If somebody like Donald Trump says, oh, well, I'm broke and all this, they still got some money and some things rolling along. I mean, I was really broke. When you reach in your pocket and there's nothing in there but lint, that's the real deal. And I kind of had to work my way back out of that. It was kind of everything coming back in. Oh, there's that little crippled boy. And you always have the self-doubt. What made you think this was going to work for you anyhow? You knew it was just a matter of time. Things like that.
And how'd you get past all of that? How did you get up and go to keep going, rebuild it?
I'll be honest with you. That's one of the blessings of having a partner. Um, both of us weren't down at the same time.
Okay.
And there were times that we were carrying each other through it. It wasn't easy. There was a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of tears because I went as far as I did and to see it all disappear. It took basically 18 months to lose everything that I spent 10 years building. And it was embarrassing. I mean, there were people that were counting on me and things that I did that should have been great, and it just snowballed, and that was the end of it. And sometimes the only thing you can say is, I got to get over this. I got to keep moving. You got to look at next. And that's where I had to be. And for somebody to tell you, oh, I just stepped right over that. No, you don't. You fight your way through it. And I went back to reading books and, watching YouTube, motivational stuff, all that, over and over again, because I needed stuff in my corner. I needed to basically arm me again.
Right.
And that happens to everybody from time to time, but COVID was a drastic hit that ruined a lot of people. And it's one of them deals. If you're going through hell, don't stop now.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's easy to say, but at the time you just feel like, man, I'll go get a job somewhere. And luckily, I never did. I was able to keep things moving and all that stuff. But you get to the point of what's going to happen here. Am I going to move forward or am I going to be stuck here? And doubt always says to you, I don't think I can build myself a second time. And you'll run into challenges and you'll be like, why was this so much easier the first time? Well, the reason it was so much easier is I had a job and stable income. The second time around, I was purely counting on business income. And I remember I told you about when I was 14 going to Shriners Hospital. There was a counselor, not a counselor, a social worker that set that up. And when it was all over, he came to my family and he said, I want to take Don out for dinner, as a celebration after surgery and all this. And I had a cast like from my hip down. And at the time, they were like plaster of Paris back then. They were heavy. And I had a walker because I don't have balance to use crutches. And, my parents were kind of doubtful of that whole situation. Well, I was in, I'm like, yep, we're going. And, got me in the car and all this. And we went to Pizza Hut. That was the only game in town. And that gentleman, he said to me at the time, he said, Don, he said, what are you going to do with your life? What's your plan? He said, let me tell you this. He said, do you realize you could go on disability and never work a day in your life? And that, I could just feel my face getting red. That pissed me off. I've always been a very prideful person. And I said, no, I'm going in business for myself. Now, at 14 years old, I had no idea what that business was going to be. And he said, I knew you were going to say that. He said, I didn't say that to upset you. He said, I wanted to hear what you were going to say. And see, I saw what business would do. My dad had set the example. He had the biggest tire shop in our area, and he was making the money to show it. And he had, nice vehicles and all that stuff. And then he used to coach me financially because I'd go out and buy these new vehicles and all this. He said, the problem with you is you want what I have now. You didn't see when I was building it and all that kind of stuff, the sacrifices that I made. I was too young to understand all that. I wasn't in business or anything then. All I saw was a new truck and this, that, and the other thing. But I'm very grateful that my dad was in business and coached me the way that he did because that's what I wanted. I saw what being in business would do, and I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make money like that. And, he always talked to me about cash flow and, this, that, and the other thing. And I wouldn't have known that had my dad worked in a factory. So even when I was working in a factory and this, that, and the other thing, I was still thinking, what can I do? That's what got me in the Amway business. I didn't know nothing about network marketing or how to talk to people and this, that, and the other thing, but I wanted to be in business of some kind. And that was the start. And it's almost like God reached down and said, we got to put you over here so you can get some self-esteem. And that's kind of the way it went.
Yeah, my my dad had his own business too, and but one of the things that he repeated often was he said avoid making big mistakes, and I've been trying to get to a point where my wife was, thank God bless her, she said, look, it's okay to make mistakes. That's how you learn and stuff. And so I've had this sort of battle going on, where I sort of grew up with this idea of like, don't take risk. And uh, and it's been a challenge, working through that, I mean, even now, and I've taken risks, and I mean, one of the things that you said that I really identified with is that you know, don't just focus on all the stuff that can go wrong, and because that's kind of where that's sort of where I start. And then I've got to kind of work my way back to, if I want to have a life, I'm going to have to take a risk, and so, and kind of every single time talk myself through it,
Right.
you know. But I don't have any, I didn't have any like, really sort of, I didn't have a childhood disease. I didn't have, I didn't come from a broken home, or I didn't come from violence. And so I didn't have a lot of the traditional challenges that people had to overcome. And in some ways, I think it's made it a little more challenging to identify the challenges I do have, because
Uh, I-
we've all got them, right?
right, right. I'll tell you this. I am to the point that I tell people that I wasn't raised normally. Here over the weekend, I just went back to see my parents and we celebrated their 54th wedding anniversary. So I had a great life growing up. My parents were together and my mother was a stay-at-home housewife. She had dinner on the table every night, and my dad did what he needed to do as far as, making the money for that to happen. And I feel very fortunate. You talk to people, oh, I was, come from a broken home, this, that, and the other thing. Now, divorce is kind of the normal, and you don't hear too many people say, oh, well, we just celebrated our 54th wedding anniversary and all that kind of stuff. So I feel very fortunate that, blessed that that was able to happen. I didn't deal with a lot of the issues that other kids dealt with. So, and you know, which is good because I had my own other issues to deal with.
Indeed.
I had to get myself through this. So, but I never felt that I was handicapped. Um, One of the things I don't like to see. To me, I don't take good pictures. I don't like to see me on video because that's not what I see in my mind's eye. you know. And one of the things I do from stage, I'm sure, you see the picture there on the screen
Um,
of the muscle shirt. Are you able to see that?
no, I'm not seeing it.
Oh, okay. What I have, it's a Halloween shirt that shows like six pack abs and all that stuff.
Oh, I saw it on your website. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I will wear a hoodie on stage and I will ask people what do they see when they think about themselves and their business. Are you somebody that thinks, oh, I screw this up all the time, or I'm not good at this or good at that? Or I said, or do you see this? And I unzip it and take it off. Is this what you see? The muscles that you see in the superhero and all that kind of stuff. And what it comes down to is nobody sees that. You got to work to get there. So, and that's why I do that. I point that out to them that, hey, everybody has the same fear as you. You just got to be willing to push through it. Everybody has the same dream. They want to live a great life and do all kinds of things and not worry about money. They want to be around everybody that they love and change their lives and all that stuff. Everybody has that dream. I don't care what race you are or where you're at. That they want to be able to do whatever they want to do, and they don't want to have to be stressing over money. Well, the way you get there and with the business that you're building is you have to get to the mindset that you see yourself in that muscle shirt. I'm badass enough to get through this. This is just a roadblock. I can get through this the same as anything else. And when I went broke and had to file two bankruptcies, I mean it takes its toll. It is basically a self-esteem buster. And it took me some time to get through that, to get back to the fighting side, so to speak. I was just kind of going through the motions of what am I going to do now? And part of me, there comes a time when you realize, okay, I can't save this anymore. It's gone. And I had hit that point, and I had to go to my dad to borrow the money to file the bankruptcy. When it cost 5 grand to file two bankruptcies, it might as well have been $50 million. I didn't have either one,
Right.
and I didn't know how I was going to get it. Um, So I went to my dad and borrowed the money, and that's how I filed the bankruptcies. And then I had to decide, okay, am I going to go back to a normal life? Am I going to give in and go work a job and be normal, so to speak, or do I believe that I can get back where I was before, of creating online businesses and do that kind of thing? I had to totally basically reinvent myself. And it was a tough thing to do. Part the biggest thing that got into it was pride. To basically think to yourself, man, I messed up that bad that there was no fixing it. That there was no way I could get out of it. It was just going under. And the bad part of it is I would drive by properties that, you know, my company owned at the time, and there'd be new TVs in there and new cars sitting in the driveway. But because the governor said, oh, they don't have to pay, that's what they were doing. So yeah, it was definitely different.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that, it's helpful to hear the stories, because it gives hope to
Right, right,
and it's like, I always one of the phrases I love is example is the most powerful form of leadership. And I think that, sharing your story really, helps me and others, say, yeah, you know what? It's worth the risk. I mean, when I had a secure corporate job in my 20s, and I left it to go out on my own. And my dad, he was a depression baby, and so he was very conservative on stuff. And so, he was really upset that I was going to leave this secure corporate job. And that was back in the in the early 80s when corporate jobs were secure, much more so than today.
right,
Most of
right,
the people that I worked with, uh, this was the only job they'd ever had. I mean, and some of them had been on the job 30 or 40 years already, and so it was very secure. And I told my dad, I said, I could take failing at trying to be all I could be better than I could take not trying. And so I've got to do this. And I kind of reach back to that because, you know, in some ways, my life would have been a lot easier had I just stayed there in some ways. But I go back and I reflect on that and I say, yeah, but I remember that time in my life when the most important thing was to figure out, what I could do with my life to make it meaningful and worthwhile.
right.
And that, taking the risk to do that was worth it. And but I have to go back often to that to remind myself. Because sometimes I go, this is just too friggin' hard.
Did you ever hear that song by Jelly Roll? I only talk to God when I need a favor.
No, but I like it.
He wrote a song and it starts out, I only talk to God when I need a favor, and you think, man, he knows me. But that was the situation I was in. I mean, when everything was going great, I wasn't leaning so much on the spiritual side of things. When I was wading through the trenches and up to my neck in it, it's like I was talking to God every 30 seconds, it was like that bad. And that's how it is. Now that song came out and became a number one hit. It obvious, when it starts out, I only talk to God when I need a favor. It's like, man, the guy knows me. That's something everybody can relate to.
I have been there.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of them deals. And see, back from my drinking days, I had a couple DUIs and all that kind of stuff. And what I learned at an early age, it's pretty tough to convince a cop you walk this way all the time when you smell like you've been drinking all night. And that it's one of them deals, you start talking to God. He said, you only talk to me whenever you're in trouble. Well, can we work out a deal before they put the cuffs on? It's getting kind of tight down here. But my first plan for, believe it or not, for a digital product, I wrote my own joke book. and I go by the pen name Limpin' Leroy. Now, uh, about the time that I was ready to put it out, my real estate business took off. And I wasn't exactly writing Bibles at the time, so I never did anything with it. It's on my computer, but nobody ever knows about it because I didn't want that reputation out there. But I can do stand-up comedy and all that kind of stuff. So I got real comfortable. I made it a strong point of being in front of people and entertaining the crowd, so to speak. Now, back then, I mean, alcohol helped, but uh, it got me to the point where I could, I've took training, I can speak and stealth from stage and that kind of stuff. And that's the muscle shirt that you've seen and that sort of thing. So, and it all started way back when, and it's weird when I look back, you didn't even know what was happening at the time. Like me being in the Amway business, I didn't realize what a difference that was going to make, and things like that. But I could have never got here without stepping through there. I wouldn't have had the self-esteem. I wouldn't have recognized the opportunity. Even clear back to the point of my dad being in business and, talking to me about you want to be paid for the things you know, not what you can do. And had I not heard that, I wouldn't have thought like that.
Right.
So I don't know where I'd have been, but it seemed like everything just fit the way it needed to for me to be able to move forward. And when I was going through the mess and had to file the bankruptcies and all that kind of stuff, the pieces I needed did show up, and things started to move forward again. And obviously I wasn't where I wanted to be and not, making the big money that I wanted and all that. But it showed me the way that, hey, you can do this. You can pick yourself back up. So that's that's how we got here. That's what created all this. I would come up with these ideas, and sometimes they were good ideas, and other times they were just flat out stuff you should have wish you'd have never thought of. And sometimes you don't see the problem until you're in the middle of it. And
Yeah.
then you're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I didn't realize that was going to happen, type thing. And one of the things I always say, you've heard me say it a couple of times in here, never let your limitations dictate the size of your dream. And that's why I was able to start at ground zero, build my business with the mindset of a quadriplegic, because I knew that physically you were never going to see me out putting a roof on or painting a house or replacing windows or all the stuff you got to do to get a real estate business. Well, I didn't focus on any of that. Everybody wants to be, a Donald Trump when it comes to real estate, not in spite of whatever he did with politics or whatever, just him being a real estate investor and the things that he's done. Well, everybody wants that if you could get there. But it's weird. At the time, I had no money, no credit, I had no business being in that room. And it was like that guy said, Don Shade, I'm talking to you. Pay attention. Because when I left there, I thought, I'm going to figure this out. and I did. That guy's program was $5,000. His name was Ron LeGrand. And that was the first program of that kind that I bought. And I went through it word for word and, got started. And I was less than a $40,000 a year factory worker at that time. But once I got started, I was able to buy more training and move forward from there.
Well, you've certainly inspired me and given me a lot to talk about, and I'm sure that the audience is in the same position. So that is really thought-provoking in the best of ways. So I appreciate what you've shared. If people want to get in touch with you, or do you have any last things that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, one last thing I would like to share before I give out how to get in touch with me and that kind of thing. Um, I was in the third in high school that made the upper two-thirds possible. The, the only reason I graduated is because my dad informed me that there was no other options. I had no interest in school, still don't. The only reason that I'm good with courses now is because they show me how to get to the check. They didn't show me that in high school. Now, and basically, I always make sure to tell people, look yourself in the eye and be honest about you and where you stand and where you want to go. Figure out what's holding you back so that you can overcome that limitation. Now, if you want to get into our software and things like that, you can go to the page. Let me see here. What do we got? Simplified lead machine system. That is our whole complete system that will do basically everything for you. And what I'll do here, we'll put in the show notes, that kind of stuff for your audience. And one of the things I do, that the company that I created after the Millionaire Maker is Partnership of Power. And what I do, I give a 50% commission, um, like to you for having me a guest on your podcast. If anybody gets into our programs, um, you would get a 50% commission. And what I like to tell people is, how would you like to make money off of somebody else's efforts? Because word of mouth travels faster than any form of advertising or anything like that. And that's how we build our business. It's people helping people. It doesn't matter about AI. You're not going to lose that personal touch. And that's one of the things that I told Chris as we were putting this together. I want to make sure that we still have that personal touch. I'm talking to people face to face, or at least computer screen to computer screen, where they know that I'm real. They know I've been through it. They know that I've shoveled some shit along the way to get here. The way you learn to be great is off of other people's mistakes. My email address personally is don@partnershipofpower.com. And you can reach out to me with questions or anything. Um, like I said, what we'll do here, I'll have Chris set you up with a show notes page, and it'll give all the links so everybody can get in and see all that stuff. And that's how we can move forward.
That'd be awesome. That would be awesome. Um, and make it really like, user friendly because I'm not a tech guy.
Uh, Chris, Chris will walk you straight through, and what I tell him is just treat them like you're dealing with me.
Yeah,
uh,
no,
he,
go ahead.
he's been dealing with somebody that's been on the stupid side of tech for years, and does great at it.
Well, I'll look forward to it because that's what I need. I need a click by click lead me through it.
Yeah, and that's where most business people are, unless you're in a tech related business, then they're good at it. And one of the things that I always tell people is, don't be afraid to say, "Hey, I can't do this." Most people want to hide that and they want to move on and do what they do and that sort of thing. I would rather lay it out there. Okay, let's deal with the problem. For instance, I can't afford this. I don't have any money. Okay, what do we got to do to change your income? One of the reasons I'm not willing to go get a job is because that doesn't fix my problem. It doesn't change my income. I have a bigger dream than a 20 or $25 an hour job.
Right,
And I'm limited because of what I can do physically. So I need a sit down job.
right. So there's one question I got to ask you, because it's kind of central in my life, and that is that what can you nail down what you've done to consistently build greater self-esteem?
I, to be honest with you, I've listened to motivational stuff and listened to books on audio. I'm not a book reader because my mind wanders and I fall asleep and all that kind of stuff. And I read one chapter and I'm thinking I should buy a boat. Just something totally off the wall type thing. Where if I'm listening to it in audio, I can listen to it while I'm doing other things. I've totally eliminated TV from my life, um, because I feel that's a big time waster. Um, but I always make sure that every day I'm building me in some form or another. one of the things I do, I ride an exercise bike. I'm up to 5 miles a day, and that's where I stay. I started out basically I couldn't hardly pedal it, uh, not because of muscle things, but coordination. If I'd have had to balance it, I'd have fell over. Now, when I was a little kid, I had a bike and I was good at riding it, but as you get older, you're not quite as limber and as flexible as you used to be, type thing. But I'm always listening to audiobooks. I'm always um, paying attention to what other business owners do. I hear them come off with a lot of decent stuff that makes a big difference. Little things maybe that they went through. Um, and different people have said they've learned a lot off of me because they never thought the way that I, lay things out there. So in a sense, I've made my handicap so to be my superpower because I knew that, okay, I'm so-called limited. I'm going to build seven figures and I'm going to use my brain to do it. And that's what I did. So when something starts stressing you out or whatever, start thinking, who can I hand this off to? And that's a lot of what I did.
Well, I went on your website and I signed up for a session with you. So,
I saw that.
so I'm looking forward to it. And I think that, um, you know, you just, you have authenticity and you strike me as the real deal.
Thank you.
You know,
Thank you.
and so I want to take another step forward and I would encourage, if if you listeners feel the same way to do the same thing. So
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate you having me as a guest, and I hope that people are able to hear this and it makes a difference for them that they can kind of change what they're doing a little bit and get through whatever it is that they're dealing with.
yeah, I think I think it's I know it was helpful to me, and so I'm confident it's helpful to the audience as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, well, so Chris is going to reach out to me and walk me through how I do what, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Put together show notes at the end of your podcast.
Okay.
Will this be the first episode you've ever done that?
Yeah, that I've gotten it from somebody. Yeah, show notes from somebody else. Yes.
I'll talk to Chris and make sure he shows you how to do that and get it all set up and all that.
Yeah.
Walk you right through it.
Yeah, I'll need some serious hand holding. Yeah.
That's what we do. That's what we do. So,
All right. Well, again, thank you for being such a great guest, and I'm looking forward to my call with you and engaging with you further tomorrow.
all right. It has been an honor to be here. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.